We've been trying to tell better stories about women and clergy and the church because we really need to tell better stories. Instead of just complaining about it, what if we flood the airwaves with something different?
So if this is how God's asking me to serve, yeah, this is where God called us. And I just loved that. I served as chaplain for 2.5 years, loved serving the student body. As I was serving, had been called in the search process when Trevecca Community Church, which is the church that Tim and I have worshiped in since we moved to Nashville for the last 6 years. This has been our home church. And was called about letting my name go forward in the search process for the church. And I initially actually said no. I said, it's crazy. I've only been chaplain a couple of years, and I just can't imagine making a transition right now. Well, I started into my Doctor of Ministry program, which one of our very first classes we took was really about spiritual discernment and spiritual friendship. Discerning the voice of God, which, Joanne, I know was one of your questions that you were already kind of setting me up for. So maybe,
yeah.
And they just took us through some pretty incredible processes for being attentive to the Spirit and really trying to discern the voice of God, attending to all of the faculties that God has given us for discernment. And I didn't realize how limited I had really been in thinking about how you find the voice of God, right? I kind of felt like, well, either God just gives you this lightning bolt in the head where you just are kind of struck down by God and you know exactly what you're supposed to do, or you basically make your pros and cons list and pick what you think is best and trust that God's going to be in it. And so just going through a process of recognizing, wow, God actually works in and through our sense of desires and longing, and shapes those desires and longing towards things of the kingdom. And God uses our emotions as ways to be our teacher and teach us what God's saying to us and how we're responding to the voice of God. And so just realizing like there were this whole kind of set of faculties that I had closed off from the discernment process. And I had a friend in the program as I was just sharing like, wow, I can't believe, and I had shared that I was just asked about putting my name forward at this church. And I so quickly shut it down because I thought, well, no, that doesn't make sense on the pros and cons list. And I just closed the door. And that friend said, well, what are you longing for these days? Like, what are the longings that, not just things that you want for you, but what are the longings that God is giving you these days? Yeah. And I spent a long time processing and pondering that question, and finally met up with a spiritual director and said, I'm really wrestling with this and thinking about this door that I just closed to possibly pastoring this church. And she said, well, why do you think you might open that door? I know you love your job as university chaplain and that's been going great, but why do you keep coming back to this? What do you think the longing is deep down that won't let you walk away from this? And I just sort of burst into tears, almost shouting at her. And I said, babies and old people and weddings and funeral and baptisms and communion and just, all of the things of the church life that I had been longing for in chaplaincy ministry, and even wanting to be able to be that kind of pastoral presence here on the university campus. Right. And so that was kind of a game changer for me, and allowed me to put my name back in the process. And
we've been trying to tell better stories about women and clergy and the church because we really need to tell better stories. Instead of just complaining about it, what if we flood the airwaves with something different?